Welcome to the Putting Your Business on the Map podcast. I'm your podcast host, Landon Blake, a land surveyor living and working in Central California. Happy to have you here. Let's go ahead and dive right into today's episode. The title of today's episode is Segmenting Your Market and Using Marketing Personas. This is another episode that we're doing on the series about finding good clients. To start the episode, I want to tell you about a couple different restaurants in my hometown of Stockton. Maybe a better word for them is eateries. It's a little more broad. I'll actually tell you about 3 restaurants. We talked about restaurants a little bit in the episode on domain expertise. And I think they're a good way to illustrate the concept of market segmentation and why it's important. So let me tell you about these 3 eateries. So the first one I see almost every morning on my way to work. Not very far from my house, there's a pretty busy gas station. And Monday to Friday, from probably 5 or 6 a.m. till 8 a.m., there is a little middle-aged Hispanic lady that parks her minivan on the little side road next to the gas station and sells burritos and tamales out of the back of her minivan. And I've never stopped there, but it looks like she does a pretty brisk business. I imagine those are some pretty good tamales. Pretty good tamales and burritos. So she does a pretty good business there. She's just catering to construction workers and warehouse workers. I'm on the south part of Stockton, and it's fairly industrial, and so there's a lot of those kinds of folks in the area. And so she saw a good opportunity there. And I mentioned before, I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast. I think yeah, but I respect her hustle. She's out there every morning. I don't know if I've ever driven by early enough to not see her there, so fairly certain she gets there before 6 a.m. every day. I'm usually driving by there right before 6 a.m. So she does a brisk business there to that particular clientele, we would call it. Then there's another restaurant or eatery in town. It's called the Vega Brothers. It's over in a little bit nicer part of town. And it's an excellent Italian restaurant. If you're ever in Stockton, I encourage you to eat at the Vega Brothers. It is my wife and I's probably favorite restaurant in Stockton. Excellent Italian food. It is a more upscale restaurant. I mean, it's not a suit and tie place, but it's definitely more upscale. There's candles on the table, and you can make a reservation if you want. My wife would eat there all the time, but I tell her this is a special occasion place. This is a two or 3 times a year kind of restaurant for Landon Blake. I don't know what it cost me to get out of there with a plate for myself and my wife and a salad and a couple glasses of wine for my wife, 2 or 3 glasses of wine, but it's well north of $100. It might be $150 or $200 with the tip. So that's not a place that Landon Blake eats every weekend. But they also have been around for several years, and I think they do well. The gentleman that runs the restaurant, I believe he's the owner. You can tell he really cares about the food there, and he cares about the experience that his customers have, and it's a well-run eatery. It's a well-run restaurant. Now, what market segment is he serving? Well, I suspect that they have 2 primary kinds of customers. They have folks like my wife and I who might come in, once a year, a couple times a year on special occasions. My wife and I typically go there for our anniversary, or maybe to celebrate, something important that happens at work. So there's folks like us probably, and then I think just based on what I've seen, they probably have some folks in the neighborhood that are upper class that maybe they're once or twice a week. It looks like they know the wait staff and the bartender pretty well. And so that's probably the customer segments, market segments that they cater to. And I'll tell you about my third restaurant. Also in Stockton, also excellent. If you have the chance, it's called Angelina's. It's over on the southeast side of town. It's a little poor part of town, but it's also great Italian food. You can go in and sit down. Not as fancy, but great value for the money. So I eat at that Italian restaurant probably once a week, sometimes twice a week, because I really like their Italian food. Probably not twice a week, once a week. Once a week, my wife and I probably eat at Angelina's. They also will deliver via DoorDash, so I DoorDash a lot. I like their raviolis; are excellent. My wife likes they've got good lasagna. They got a good salad bar. Now, my wife and I can go to Angelina's, and we can each order a meal, and she can have a couple glasses of wine, and I can get out of there for maybe $60. So it's half to a third of what the Vega Brothers cost. It's, the atmosphere is a little more middle class, which is okay. So why do we see that? Why do we see those different types of restaurants? It's because they have chosen to specialize and serve specific segments of the market. Some of that is based on income. Some of it's just based on type of customer. The folks that are stopping to buy the tamales in the morning from the little lady in the minivan are probably not eating at the Vega Brothers on a regular basis. I suspect even if they had the extra disposable income to eat at the Vega Brothers, that the Vega Brothers would probably not be their place. I was just a guess. Maybe a few of them, but probably a lot of them, would rather be at a sports bar or at a good Mexican restaurant. Probably not. They probably wouldn't be at the Vega Brothers. So what does that teach us as survey business owners? What can we learn from the people that are running these restaurants? Well, businesses differentiate and specialize to become more profitable. That's why they do that. See, it's hard to serve both types of customers, right? It's hard for DeVega Brothers. It would be hard for DeVega Brothers to serve the construction worker stopping by in the morning to grab a tamale. It would be hard for DeVega Brothers to serve that client profitably because there's just different expectations there and a different cost structure. The lady working out of her minivan has a way lower overhead and much smaller cost structure. She doesn't have a business license. She's not paying taxes on that income. She's not getting health inspections. And DeVega Brothers, she doesn't have insurance. DeVega Brothers has all of that. So they are serving different parts of the market. And so they've specialized to serve those different, if you stop by the minivan in the morning by the gas station and ask if you could make a reservation for 4 people for breakfast on Friday, that lady is going to look at you like you're crazy. And if you go to DeVega Brothers and ask if they have any meals under $5, they are also going to look at you like you are crazy. So they have specialized, and they serve that specialization allows them to serve a particular market segment at a particular cost structure profitably. Surveyors can learn from that. I think most surveyors I know that for some reason, I have no understanding of that concept, and they just try and serve any customer or client that needs a survey, and that's not a good way to make money. I think you need to segment your market. You need to specialize. So that's what we'll talk about. We're going to talk about that in this episode. So specifically, we are going to talk about why this is important. We're going to go over some definitions. We're going to talk about when in the life of your business you should do this. We're going to talk about how you should do it and who in your business should do it. And then we're going to talk about, the 2 or 3 mistakes you should try and avoid when you segment your market. So let's begin with this first point. Why is this important? I mentioned it in the introduction, but I think it helps you to differentiate and specialize in your business. As you differentiate from your competitors and you specialize, it tends to make you more profitable. It helps you focus. One of the great struggles I have in my life is I am a man of many passions and interests, and so focus is one of my great struggles. So understanding, I don't have to worry about taking care of people that want fence surveys because I've decided not to be in that market. I also am not in the market to build condo towers or stadiums. I just don't do that kind of work. And so that allows me to focus, helps me to focus. Marketing personas, which we'll talk about a little bit later, will help you generate content marketing ideas, and they will help you create marketing content that allows you to connect with real human beings, which I think is important. I will try not to mention this more than 2 or 3 times in this episode, but even if you're like me and you do mostly business to business, most of our clients are other businesses, you still work with humans in those businesses. Our business is very much still about human to human. And so connecting with real human beings at potential clients is an important part of marketing. And I think marketing personas help you do that. I also think marketing personas put potential clients at the center of your business and your marketing effort. And that's important. You want to be solving real problems that real people have. And I think when businesses lose touch with that, when you can fall into the mistake of a business of trying to sell people what you're good at, maybe, or what you think they need, and you can lose touch. I think as businesses age and technology changes, that can especially become a problem. So that's why segmenting your market and creating marketing personas is important, I think. Okay, we're going to go through a few definitions briefly. And if you see me pause, it's because my monitors keep blacking out, which is extremely annoying. So let's define a few terms. We're going to start with a market. So when I say market, what is a market? A market is a large population interested in related products or services. So it's not segmented. So as an example, you could call a market all the people who need to buy a boundary survey, right? Whether it's for them personally or for their business. That is a market. That's pretty broad. Okay, what's a market segment? A market segment is a specific group within a market that share important traits or needs. So, for example, people who need a boundary survey to develop a commercial real estate property and they need that in the next 60 days, that is a market segment. If you can go back to the example we used in the beginning with the restaurants, the market there is people that are hungry and want to pay for a meal. That's pretty broad. A market segment is the kind of people that will stop at a minivan next to a gas station at 5:30 in the morning and buy 4 tamales. That is a market segment. Okay, what is a marketing persona? That's our last definition. A marketing persona is a short fictional biography of a potential client in a particular market segment. I think our marketing personas are 1 page, so we can keep those on 1 page. And we'll talk a little bit more about what you might put on your 1-page marketing persona. They could be 2 pages. If they get much longer than that, they become less useful. But that's what a marketing persona is. Imagine we created a fictional construction worker that was stopping by that minivan. That would be a marketing persona. All right, now that we have some definitions out of the way, and we've talked about why it's important to segment your market, we're going to take a quick break, hear from our sponsor for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. When we come back, we'll talk about when in the life of your business I think you should segment your market. Would you like to manage your land surveying or civil engineering data in a GIS? Do you work for a small organization or utility company? Have people told you that there isn't a way to get started with GIS for your data unless you have a $3 million budget and a dedicated ArcGIS server in your basement? That just isn't true. You can get started with GIS for a few $1,000s using QGIS and the expert consulting advice from the team at Redefine Horizons. We've been using open source software like QGIS to manage land surveying and civil engineering data for over 20 years. Call us to see just how easy it is to start. We can help you do an initial GIS needs assessment for your organization and introduce you to QGIS on the desktop for no charge. You can find our team on the web at www.rh-survey.com. Appreciate the team at RH sponsoring this episode. The next question we wanted to answer was, when in the life of your business should you segment your market? I want to caution you not to do that too early in the life of your business. I think if I had tried to do this in the first couple of years, it would have been too soon. I needed some feedback from the market, and I needed to figure some things out about the market and about my business before I was ready to segment. I think I'm much more comfortable doing that now. I think I've had enough time and I've learned enough about the market to be able to successfully segment the market. Now you have to be careful because the marketplace changes. As an example, COVID-19 changed the real estate market forever, I think. So you do have to be aware of that. But don't do it too early. Probably not the first year or two. You need time to run some experiments. You need time to listen to what the market's telling you, right? What your potential customers and your actual customers, clients are telling you. You think you need time to develop your core capabilities, to figure out what your culture is going to be, and to work on your, what your business model is. And also, you have to pay bills. So sometimes you might take work early in your business that you wouldn't take after your business has matured because it's really critical in the beginning to just get some revenue in the door so you can pay your bills. And people don't know you yet. You haven't established a brand or reputation. You probably don't have a regular book of clients, when you first start. And so some of it's just, you just take work. We took some jobs in our first year or two at RH that I would not take now because we were starting out, and that was okay. I was only 2 or 3 people, and we had a lower cost structure, and that was all right. It was appropriate. So I think you want to segment your market as your business matures. I'm going to give you a rule of thumb here. Every business is different, but I think from between 3 to 5 years, you should have a good idea of what your local economy and market is like, and you should be figuring out some of those other things that we talked about. As your business matures and you segment your market, it's going to help your team to focus, right? So apologize. I'm working on my word whiskers. When your business matures, probably it's more than just you. So you have a team now, more than likely. There's another so. You have a team now, and segmenting your market is going to help your team to focus on what capabilities they need to learn and master, on who the potential client is, on what marketing efforts need to be done. So I do think it's important as your business matures to segment your market and kind of figure out what your unique value proposition is, what differentiates you from your competitor. And after 3-4 years, you're going to have an idea of what your team is good at, what your organization is good at, and which jobs are profitable and which jobs are not profitable. Now, I'll just mention here, I forgot to say this at the top. Although what we're talking about today is mostly applicable to a private surveying business, I would imagine if you're in a government agency or a nonprofit that you also have to figure out what types of organizational problems are going to be and tasks are going to be solved by your team versus other teams. So, for example, if you're running a survey team at a local utility, it may be that there's a GIS department. It may be that, there's almost certainly a civil engineering department. There might be a real estate department. And there could easily be some overlap between the types of tasks those departments handle. And so you can think about it. There's another so. You can think about market segmentation as taking the problems in your organization, the problems your organization is trying to solve, who your key stakeholders are, and asking yourself, of those set of problems, what is my team in the best position to handle, my team or department, and what are my related departments, what are they in a better position to handle? And there's just some back and forth and some negotiation and some teamwork there. That you have to work with the other department heads to figure that out. But you can also, to some extent, I guess you're not really segmenting your market there as much as you're segmenting the work to be done. But I think a lot of these principles apply. All right, the next part of the episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about who should do this. in your business or your organization, who should be in charge of segmenting the market and developing marketing personas. I do think the first part, especially when it comes to segmenting the market, that should be a business leader. So it should be a high-level person. It's a person that needs domain expertise and business expertise. If you haven't listened to our episode on that. One of the reasons why it needs to be a high-level person, I think, is because you want to make sure that when you segment your market, that is aligning with your overall business strategy. But an important part of strategy is figuring out what customers or clients you serve and how you provide them value at a reasonable profit, and that is going to be closely related to how you segment your market. I go back to the example of Southwest Airlines when they first started. This comes from the article, What is Strategy by Michael Porter. But when they first started as a company, Southwest, they weren't going after the traditional business customer that other airlines served. They were basically replacing Greyhound buses. So they were going after families and non-business customers with short, quick, convenient, cheap flights. And they were very successful with that business model for a long time. So understanding who their market segment was a key part of their overall strategy. And so that's why I think it needs to be a high-level person in your business that helps with this. I also think you need to involve your marketing or business development team. Every time I say that, I chuckle a little bit in the back of my mind because I know a lot of you are thinking, what marketing and business development team? Yeah, that might be you, land surveyor. So it might be the same person at a small business. We're big enough now that I've finally been able to hire a person that helps part-time with marketing. She also does some project coordination for me, but she's working on marketing every week. And so I would want to involve her in segmenting the market and developing marketing personas. Her name is Miriam. I'm recording this episode for Miriam. She's going to school for marketing, but they hadn't talked about marketing personas yet. So I wanted to do this episode for her. And of course, here at RH, I try and involve my partner Brian in those conversations as well, because he also has a role in driving strategy here. And I need to, Miriam and I need to be talking to Brian about who his potential customers are and what their needs are and what our value proposition is for them. So how do you do this, or how should you do it? I've got three steps for how you can segment your market. Now remember, the market is broad. Remember from our definition. So the market might be everybody looking for a boundary survey, or the market might be everybody looking for a topo survey, or the market might be everybody in your major metro area that is going to do land development, or that has to deal with underground utilities as part of a construction project, whatever. It's fairly broad. So how do you take that and segment it? So I've got 3 questions you want to ask that will help you to do this. One is, so question number 1, what is the job to be done by your client? So if a client is hiring you, they are hiring you because they have a job that is to be done. There's a really great podcast that has a short part of a conversation about the people that buy milkshakes at McDonald's, and they may not be the people that you would think. That people buy milkshakes at McDonald's for interesting reasons. I think it was Clayton Christensen that came up with the job to be done framework. You hear me type, and I'm just going to Google this for you guys. I believe it was Clayton Christensen. There's a whole website on it now from Stratogen. I'll remember to have Carly put this in the show notes. I'm sorry, guys. I thought I was going to be able to find this. I know it was something I heard on Harvard Business Review. Give me one more second here. Yeah, Clayton Christensen. Okay, so he developed that framework, job to be done framework. So check it out. We'll get Carly to put it in the show notes. But ask yourself, what is the job the client is trying to do? And when you answer that question, surveyors, think big. oftentimes we think too small. So the answer is not, my client is trying to get a topo survey done. That is not what they are trying to do. They need you to do a topo survey because they are trying to do something else. So you need to think big here. We always think too narrow. Your client doesn't care about the topo survey. They are trying to probably to build something. That's why they want a topo survey. Same thing with a boundary survey. What is the job my client's trying to do? It's not a boundary survey. They are trying to build a fence or fight with their neighbor or figure out where they can put a garage or determine what their property's worth. It's not get a boundary. That is not the job, right? So think about what is the job that needs to be done. That will help you segment the market. Ask who needs the job to be done. So go back to the example I gave you about the restaurants. The market is people that want to pay for a meal to be prepared that they can eat. That's pretty broad. But think about the job to be done. Who needs that job done? When Landon Blake goes to DeVega Brothers, he's trying to treat his wife out to a nice dinner for her anniversary, right? The fellow that's stopping at the minivan next to the gas station to buy 3 or 4 tamales in the morning, he does not care about his anniversary at that moment. He is trying to make sure that he has some delicious feeling nutrition to get him through his workday. Different jobs to be done, different people trying to get the job done. And then the last question, number 3, you can ask is, why do they need the job done? And so there's what is the job they're trying to do, who's trying to get it done, and then why. Why is really important. People call here all the time and they say, I need a boundary survey. The very first question I ask is, why? Why do you think you need a boundary survey? Because they often don't need a boundary survey. Or if they do, they need a particular kind of boundary survey. And the only way I can figure that out is to ask them why. When you ask that second question, number 2, who needs the job to be done, look for common traits or characteristics or common needs or wants that will help you to segment your market. And then if it helps, you can create little mini personas, just a paragraph. You said, describe that fella. It's usually a fella. It could be a woman that stops at the minivan at 5:30 in the morning to buy a couple tamales. Who is that? And you can sketch out a little mini persona. That will help you segment your market. I will think about doing a PYB OTIMA Extra where we get on the whiteboard and try and segment a market. Maybe we won't do it for survey business. Maybe we'll do it. I'd like to do that for like a nonprofit, our CLS, California Land Surveyors Association chapter. It'd be interesting to do that. I'll try and make a note to do that because I think it'll teach it. An example would help teach the principles. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear one more time for our sponsor for this episode, Redefine Horizons. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you should create and use marketing personas. So we just talked about how you segment a market. I gave you 3 questions to ask. Then when we come back, we're going to talk about, all right, once you've segmented your market, you got to do that first. How do you create what I call marketing persona? Google Earth is a great tool. It is the software that brought the power of geospatial data to the masses. A lot of land surveyors use Google Earth to manage their data. However, your organization can quickly outgrow Google Earth for survey data management. Is there a better way? Yes, you can use QGIS and open source desktop GIS to manage your organization's land surveying and civil engineering data. The team at Redefine Horizons can help you do that. They've got decades of experience managing land surveying and civil engineering data using open source GIS tools. The best part is this doesn't need to cost $1 million. It is very easy and inexpensive for your organization to get started with QGIS. As a bonus, QGIS can import and export the KML files used in Google Earth. That means you can still use Google Earth when it makes sense. Check out Redefine Horizons on the web at www.rh-survey.com and let us know how we can help get you started with QGIS. There's no charge for your initial consultation. Okay, now that we heard from our sponsor, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can create actual marketing personas, as I mentioned right before the break, you want to make sure that you segment your market first. So before you go in and create your marketing personas, make sure you've segmented your market, and then you want 1 or 2 personas for each market segment. I've got a template. I'll try and remember to share it. I'll try and remember to get it where we could share it in the show notes. But we create them in Inkscape, which is a vector graphics design program. But what I would tell you is put a photo on there. Just get a photo online. It just helps, to me, it just helps having a photo so I can imagine a real person. Pick a name, give that person a name. I like to include a little bit of non-professional details about their life, hobbies, if they have kids, some personal goals they have, because it makes me feel like they're a real person. You can model that after somebody you know. And then ask these questions. What is a day in this person's life like? What is a typical day like? What's a typical work day? What's a typical weekend day like? What are their professional and personal goals? And part of being a successful business person is helping other people reach their goals, right? So think about what their goals might be. And then when you are creating marketing content for your organization, you should always have a marketing persona in front of you. Don't create those marketing personas and then throw them in a folder or a drawer and never look at them again. You're not going to get the value out of them if you do that. So you want to model this fictitious potential client. And then when you go to generate content for your website or your YouTube channel, you want to know what specific marketing persona am I trying to help with this content. And that will help you prepare laser-focused, high-value content, which is going to help establish your brand and your authority and help you build trust in potential clients. If I can remember, we'll do a PYBO Team Extra, and we'll prepare a couple marketing personas for our CLSA chapter. I think that would be super helpful for you guys and for me. So I'll try and remember to make a note to do that. We're going to wrap up here. I think this is our last section, yeah. So what mistakes should you avoid when you go in to segment your market and to create your marketing personas? I have 3 or 4 mistakes that you want to avoid. So here's the first mistake. Don't create segments that are too broad. You're going to be tempted to do that, but you're going to lose most of the benefit of market segmentation if your segments are too broad. So your market segment cannot be everybody that needs a survey. It's too broad. I really think, especially if you're a smaller business like ours, if you're under 50 people, you got to tighten that up. You got to tighten that up a little bit. Now, it could be, there's different ways you can segment a market. It could be time. It could be geography. It could be ability to pay. So, for example, your market segment might be everybody that needs a boundary survey in San Joaquin County. That's a fairly narrow market segment. I still think it's too broad, and I think it's less important to segment by geography than it used to be, but that could be. We don't typically serve clients way outside of Central California because there's an extra cost to doing that. We occasionally will do work for a good client outside of Central California, but that's the basic geographic region we serve. So you could segment that way. But don't be too broad. And you can experiment with that. Get in a room with a couple people that you know and trust, and just ask yourself, try and come up with some market segments, and then say, is this how could we broaden this? How could we narrow it? And is it too broad or too narrow? And you can. There's no black and white line between too broad and just right, or too narrow and just right in your market segments. It's not a black line. It's a gray fuzzy boundary. And there isn't always a right or wrong answer. So you're going to expect, you're going to try some things out and talk about it and run some experiments, and that's okay. You're going to learn from those experiments. But don't be so broad that you lose all the benefit of segmentation to begin with. And I think that is the mistake that most surveyors will make when they sit down and try and segment their market. Okay, the other mistake is to go too narrow. It's less likely. I'd rather have you go too narrow than too broad, but you can go too narrow. If your market segment is defined too narrowly, your marketing team is not going to be able to generate enough qualified leads, and you're not going to be able to earn enough revenue to support your business. Now, there is a trade-off there between, the more specialized and niche your market segments become, typically the smaller your business has to be. And that's a real crude rule of thumb. I think having a well-defined value proposition and understanding your market segments will also help you grow a good growth, good organic, healthy growth. The lady at next to the gas station in the minivan is not going to make $1 million a year selling tamales, and she probably knows that. Neither is DeVega Brothers. I think they know that. Jack in the Box, they do millions of dollars a year in revenue as a restaurant. But they appeal to a much broader market segment. So that's one of the reasons why I think this is so important for surveyors segmenting markets, is because we tend to run small businesses. And one of the ways you can successfully run a small business is by segmenting your market, specializing, and providing a unique value proposition. But you can't go too narrow. Again, there isn't a black and white boundary between just right and too narrow. So you have to experiment with that a little bit. Probably have to experiment a little bit, have some discussions about it. The next mistake, and this is the one that almost all surveyors make, is you just fail to segment your market at all. That is the worst of the three mistakes. Do not sell surveys or surveying services or mapping services to anyone who calls up your phone. That is a mistake. That is a recipe to be unprofitable, and that is the business model most surveyors run. Some jobs will be too small. Some jobs will be too big. Some jobs will just not be a good fit. As an example, I heard about a Southern California company. I don't know them very well. I think they're a pretty good survey company, actually. They have a decent reputation. I don't know anybody that works there. But I did hear through the grapevine that they're up doing a couple hundred miles. Did you hear that, surveyors? They're doing a couple hundred miles of surveys up. I wouldn't even say it's in my neck of the woods. It's actually 2 or 3 hours north of where I'm at. And this company is in the Los Angeles basin. And they're not much bigger than us. And I don't know, man. Like, why are they doing that? I think they're going to have a hard time making money. It's pretty field-intensive work. It's dirty and hot and nasty. And I probably wouldn't go down and take 200 miles of that kind of surveying in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area, and unless we were really starving to death and I was willing to take a very skinny profit margin. Because for that kind of field-intensive project, it's just too far for us. Surveyors do it all the time, though. See, those folks at that survey firm haven't really asked themselves, are they really surveying the market in... Are they really surveying I think I said surveying, sorry. Are they really surveying... There I did again. Are they really surveying the market for surveys in Northern California if they're a 10 or 15 or 20 person firm based in Los Angeles? Yeah, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. It's one thing if you have a client, a good repeat client that has a reasonably small job, and they call you up and they say, hey, I know this isn't where you normally work, but could you go take care of this for you? We want you to do it. They went and got a huge amount, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe a couple $1 million worth of survey work that is way, way far and gone from their home base. And I probably wouldn't, Brian and I probably would not do that. We probably would not do it for a job that size. If we were going to do it on a job that size, we would almost certainly find a good partner in the Los Angeles area to help us with the field work. So don't fail to segment at all. That is a mistake. And then once you've segmented your market, and remember, it's not going to be perfect. Some of this is a learning exercise, and that's okay. But once you've segmented your market, don't fail to use those market segments and marketing personas in your business. Don't go through that effort. I mean, there is some value in going through the effort because at least then you have those market segments in the back of your mind. But use those marketing personas. Don't put them in a shelf. Use them for marketing and for business development, but also for things like your strategy, determining your strategy and updating your strategy, your strategic plans. Use it to figure out what you need to be training people on and how you need to be developing them professionally, and use them to figure out what kind of capabilities your organization needs to develop. As an example, and I might talk about this in a whole nother episode, but in California we have something called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, and it has a huge impact on how a lot of clients are able to develop land. And I never had a desire to learn CEQA or be involved in CEQA, and we have developed CEQA capabilities in-house to a limited degree because our clients need that service when they're doing land development, and it bundles well with the other land development services we offer. And so the market has just, those market signals have indicated to me that there is a need there, and we have chosen to develop some capabilities both as an organization and as individuals that work here to help our clients figure out some CEQA stuff. So I think understanding now the reason I didn't go looking for CEQA work. I have a market segment, which is small land development projects. Now, when I say small, I mean we don't do 2,500 lot land subdivisions here. That you don't call us for that. There's other people you call for that. But we do, shopping centers, warehouses, data centers, renewable energy projects. We do that kind of land development, and on some of that, you need to know CEQA. And so that's an example of how understanding your our market segments will. It's not just for marketing and business development and lead generation. It will also help you develop the right capabilities, both in your organization and in your people. All right, I'm getting pretty close to 40 minutes. I think 45 minutes. So let's review what we talked about in this episode. I gave you that opening example with the 3 restaurants from Stockton, right? They each serve a different market segment. We talked about why it is important to segment your market as a land surveyor and to develop marketing personas. I gave you some definitions. We talked about when in the life of your business you should market. Remember, don't do it the first couple of years. You need some time. We talked about who should do that. In your business, it should be a high-level leader and someone from your marketing or business development team. We talked about how you can do it. I gave you 3 questions to ask that will help you develop marketing segments. We talked about what you can put, what kind of information you can put in your marketing personas, what questions you can ask about the fictitious people that are modeled in your marketing personas. And then we covered 3 or 4 mistakes you want to avoid when you go to segment your market and develop your marketing personas. All right, our next episode, let me see. I want to make sure I get you guys the right name. I can't remember the exact title off the top of my head, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but we are going to talk about how, as a survey business owner, you need to let go of control as your organization grows and give more control to your team members. And when you do that, how you allow for the right kinds of mistakes. So there are, believe it or not, there are actually good mistakes and bad mistakes. So we'll talk about, as you let go of control, how do you figure out what are the good kind of mistakes and bad kind of mistakes? And how do you make sure you get more of the good mistakes and less of the bad mistakes? It's something that I've really fought with here. When I first started RH, I never thought we would be this big. And one of the things that excited me about starting my own business is I got to do everything my way, which I enjoyed because for 20 years I've been doing it other people's ways. And that didn't last very long. Poor me, cry me a river, right? Like, yeah, maybe about the first year I got to do everything the way I wanted, and then pretty soon I had a big enough team, and I realized I had to start letting them have some autonomy and some control. That meant what that means for me as a business owner is I don't always get to do things the way I want. Sometimes I do things the way my business partner Brian wants, and sometimes I do things the way my CAD management team wants, and sometimes I do things the way my party chiefs want. So that's hard for me. I'm a little bit of a control freak, so we'll talk about. But it's important to let go of control for some different reasons. So that's what we'll cover. Episode might be 27. Might be episode 27. We'll talk about learning to let go of a little control in your business and how you can manage the mistakes that inevitably come with that. So I hope to catch you on the next episode. Don't forget, if you're interested in using QGIS to manage your survey or civil engineering data, you can reach out to my team at RH. They sponsored this episode. They'll do a great job helping you with that. QGIS is an amazing open source tool. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you guys in about a week or so. As we wrap up the podcast today, I want to do a couple things. I want to let you guys know where you can find the podcast. And I also want to let you know how you can support the podcast if you've enjoyed it. So let's start with that first thing. Where can you find the podcast? The podcast lives on the web at landonblake.com/PYBOTM. So if you go to my website, landonblake.com, up at the top, you'll find a menu. Go to Learn. It's the second link in the Learn menu. That'll take you right to the podcast. We have got links to download all the episodes there in MP3 format, and we also have the show notes. You can also find the podcast on YouTube, youtube.com/PYBOTM. All of the episodes are also uploaded there. We have the podcast on Spotify, so you can find the podcast in all of those places. Second thing, how can you support the podcast? There's a few different ways you can do that. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast, reach out to me with an email, phone call, or text message. We can talk about your job opportunity for senior land surveyors, or if you have a high-quality product or service for land surveyors and mappers, we could also talk about that on the podcast. You can also subscribe to the podcast on YouTube or Spotify. Tell a friend about the podcast. Share one of your favorite episodes on social media for us. And then finally, if you'd like to make a real difference, you can go to the On Point Workshops page at Patreon. We've got a tier there, membership tier for $20 a month. You can join and support the podcast, and you get extras. We call them PYBOTM extras there. So we try and do one or two extras from each episode, video and audio, as just a little thank you to the folks that support us for $20 a month. So if you got the price of a medium pizza in your budget and you want to support the podcast, the best way to do that is on Patreon. That will help me pay for Carly. Carly is the virtual assistant and digital marketing extraordinaire that helps me with all of the unseen back-end work on the podcast. So editing, maintaining the web page, doing the show notes, that kind of stuff. Carly's great. I'd like to keep her around. One way you can help me do that is by becoming a subscriber or a member on Patreon. So appreciate everybody that's done that already, and I also appreciate the thank you notes I've gotten from several of you for the podcast. That makes a difference. I know everybody's busy. I appreciate you guys taking some time out of your busy schedule to send a thank you note. So please support the podcast, and we will catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks.